Greetings, my Israelite brothers and sisters, heirs, joint heirs, adopted, grafted, however you may come. I hope and pray that this video finds you well. Titling this countdown, final week, countdown to Pentecost. Yesterday we started the beginning of the seventh week. The seventh week. And after this week, we will come to the seventh Sabbath. And the scripture says on the morrow after the seventh Sabbath is Pentecost. So we are here. We're here to celebrate Pentecost on next week. And after the seventh Sabbath, the morrow after the seventh Sabbath, we will have Pentecost. You notice that, how you doing, Ricky? How you doing, Veronica? You know, one thing that you notice is that whenever they say the morrow after the Sabbath, they never say the first day of the week. I'm going to have to do a video on that. I may even touch on it now. But they never say the scriptures. When I say they, the Most High, he never told Moses the first day of the week. He always says the morrow after the Sabbath. And he uses that term, the morrow after the Sabbath, the morrow after the seventh Sabbath. There's two occasions that the Most High uses that phrase, the morrow after the Sabbath. He uses it in this particular context dealing with Pentecost, but there's also an eighth day that is in connection with that understanding that after a week, the next day being the eighth day. So, but again, Sunday, yesterday, started the final countdown. This weekend will be, okay, a lot of people kept Pentecost yesterday based upon the calendar. And I did a lesson on that for the last two Sabbaths for Bible study. And that came in because if you Google Easter 2019, it will tell you that Easter was on the 21st of April. If you also Google how is Easter calculated, it would tell you that in all of the terms that they're using, bottom line, when they get to the 12th month, whenever there's a full moon, they go 4 Sundays later from the full moon, or the equinox, or they say the full equinox. The reason why they do that is because they know that the Messiah was crucified during the middle of the first month. We know that because the scriptures tells us that, but the Catholics or the Roman Catholicism really doesn't know, so they try to create a fixed date that's around the weekend, because it was the weekend when the Messiah resurrected. It was the end of the Sabbath, not the first day of the week. So they tried to make Easter always on the third day or the next day, commemorating when Mary went to the grave, but he actually rose on the Sabbath. So what they do is whenever the full moon is in the 12th month, the full moon is equivalent to being the middle of the month. So they automatically go 4 Sundays later. That's how they calculate it. When you look in the dictionary or on YouTube, That's how they got up with April this year. Now, if you ask how do they calculate Pentecost, they will say on the website or when you Google it, they say that Pentecost is 50 days from Sunday, counting Sunday. So if you count Sunday as their Easter as day one, which was April the 21st, they came up, no biblical scriptures, no biblical support at all. That's how they came up with June the 9th. Or another one that they'll say is it's always 7 Sundays after Easter. And 7 Sundays after their Easter, however they calculated, it was on April the 21st. So 7 Sundays from that date is also on June the 9th. What we did this year is we did it according to the scriptures. According to the scriptures, the first day of Abib was on a Sabbath, April the 6th. 14 days later, it was April the 19th, which was on a Friday, which was Passover. The Messiah, that was on a Friday. The Messiah being the first fruits, the very next day, it was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which you can consider to be a double Sabbath. But anyway, April the 20th was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But 3 days and 3 nights from the 19th calendar this year, the 20th was day 1, Saturday, Sunday was day 2, Monday was day 3. So, which was the 21st, I believe, and you can't wave the fruit until the morrow after the Sabbath, which would have been, the Sabbath would have been the 27th of April, but you could not wave it until the 28th, which is the morrow after the Sabbath. Ye shall wave the first fruits. And then 7 Sabbaths shall be completed from that day. And this Saturday would be 7 Sabbaths. This Sabbath would be 7 Sabbaths, which is June the 15th. So if you count from April the 28th until tomorrow, you will have exactly 50 days. So from Sunday, April the 28th, when we wave the first fruits, to June the 16th, is exactly 50 days. Or you can do it another way. You can go from the 28th and count out 7 Sabbaths. So you have to go to the very next Sabbath and count down 7 Sabbaths, which would be this weekend and the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. And that's how we know that it's the June the 16th, 50 days. So you see, we do things according to scriptures. It's not conjectural. We're not guessing. We're not just throwing something in. We know the Passover is the 14th day of the first month, which happened to be, it fell on April the 19th this year. Again, that's because the first day of the month of April was on April the 6th. So it's a blessing that we know this information. It's a blessing that we can do it. And I'm grateful that I know how to do it just like this. I can just count it off, and I give praises to the Most High. I also thank my teacher, Pastor Bowie in Riverdale, for teaching me and showing me how to do it biblically. And it feels good once you know how to do it. Once you know how to do it, let me tell you, you feel good about it. Because we, being the Hebrews, we should know how to do this thing in dealing with just the sun and the moon. Because the moon is what distinguishes one month from the next, and the sun is what distinguishes one day to the next day. Sundown one day to sundown the next day. So it's a blessing that we can do this. It's a blessing that we know how to look at the crescent and when the waning of the moon to know when the first of the month is. It's a blessing, and we know how to count 14 days later simply by counting the sunsets. It's a blessing. Let me tell you, it's a blessing. One of my objectives in the ministry as a pastor is to teach people not only how to calculate the feast days, but what do they mean? What do they mean? What do they point to? What is the meaning of it? And then, of course, after that is how to observe it. A lot of people who are coming into the knowledge always want to know, how do you do it? How do you observe it? How do you observe it? And they spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to observe it instead of how to calculate it and what does it mean. And that's important than the how. The how is important, but what's before you get to the how, know why you're doing what you're doing and know when it is. Know when it is, and that's important. So we shouldn't have to be looking at the Gregorian calendar and looking for what the Romish Christianity puts up or the Jewish people put up, because those dates are conjectural. Sometimes they change it based upon how they feel, and I'm not kidding about that. I'm not kidding about that. The so-called rabbis, the Jewish rabbis, say that they're going to always make sure that there's a feast day is not going to fall in a position where you got a weekly Sabbath and then a feast day Sabbath back to back. So they will change the date on you. And you go looking in the calendar, for all of you all messianic people that's trying to not learn how to do it, and you're following the wrong calendar. You can follow somebody, but you better know where they get the date from and how they calculate it. Understand that. More important, just learn how to do it for yourself. That's all. As Israel, we are supposed to know how to do this ourselves. And again, I thank the Almighty. I'm not going to act like I always knew how to do it, although I've always kept it. I came from a standpoint of looking to see what the calendar says, okay? But you can be off. You can be off by a whole week, especially when it comes to Pentecost. And for those that are trying to keep Pentecost on Savan 6, I wish you would send me an email, because I can show you very quickly Pentecost is not, let me say it again, on Savan 6. If you're keeping Pentecost where it always falls on Savan 6, you are in error. And it's okay. I used to do the same thing. But when you get understanding, walk into it. Don't fight it, just walk into it. And we should always be seeking to get understanding. Okay? You know, you just don't hold on to what you're doing and I don't want to hear and don't tell me. Sit down and just say, hey, show me how you got to that. You know, because we should always want to seek higher truth and understanding. And so reach out, because I can show you why it is not Savan 6 like the Jewish people do. It's not Savan 6. And incidentally, This year, in 2019, Savan 6 fell yesterday, the same day that the Romish Christians celebrated their Pentecost. It does not always fall like that, because those that keep Savan 6 as a fixed date, sometimes it can fall on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because they're keeping a fixed date. But this year in 2019, Savan 6 fell on a June the 9th, yesterday. Now, the reason why I did that is because those that teach that doctrine always count 50 days from Abib the 16th. And this year, Abib the 15th was on April the 20th, which was a Sabbath. April the 21st was Abib the 16th, and they started counting day one on a Sunday. 50 days later, it happened to fall on June the 9th, which is the same time that the Romish Christians keep it 7 Sundays from April the 21st. I'm dropping some good stuff now. Y'all can go back, listen to this, and I'm going to make this video short so you can go back and re-listen to it and follow the calendar and what I'm saying. I've taught it so many times in the past 2 weeks during our Bible study. I believe just about everybody in our congregation knows how to do it now. From the 18-year-olds as up to folks 70, 80 years old. They know how to do it. They know how to do it. And so, but go back and look at it. All the information I'm giving you, you can check it out. This year, Abib the 16th was on a Sunday, which was the 21st. And that's why they say the morrow after the Sabbath. When they say count from the morrow after the Sabbath, the Jewish people, the Messianic Jews, and the regular Jews, they count Abib the 16th as day one, because they interpret the Feast of the First Fruits says count on the morrow after the Sabbath. They interpret that to being the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's how they get it. Not realizing that the harvest, the first fruits, is the Messiah. So you got to find out, when did he resurrect? And if it was on a Thursday, you got to wait to that Sabbath, and the morrow after that Sabbath, you count one. If he resurrected on a Monday, that means you got to go extra days. Anytime during that week the Messiah resurrected, including up to the Sabbath. If he resurrect on the Sabbath, then the very next day you can start waving your fruit. And that's what happened in the year that the Messiah died, and he was crucified. When he had his passion, he was killed on a Wednesday, and from Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday, Friday to Saturday. And he rose before the sun went down on that Sabbath. So anything that, any harvest that we gather, that we reap before that sun goes down, from that Sunday to that Sabbath, as long as it's within that week, you can wave it the morrow after the Sabbath. And so since the Messiah was, he had resurrected before the sun went down on the weekly Sabbath, the next day he was waved. That's why Mary could not touch him in the book of St. John, the 20th chapter. You can read that. Read around the 11th verse. He said, "Don't touch me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father." because he had to go be waved. He had to go and be waved. And then that next day, that same day, because remember, Leviticus 23 and 14 says, the self same day after it's been waved, now you can partake and handle your first fruit. So I'm just glad I understand that. I give praises to the Most High. I really do. I give praises to the Most High. I have spent the time studying it, so I want to be able to take what I study and give it to you without you boggling your head with it. I just want you to go back and listen to the video, to this car cam, so you can look it up for yourself. So peace and shalom to all of you all. Let me just say hello to a lot of you all. Rodney says a lot of numbers got tossed around. I got lost. Yes, that's why I said go back and listen to it, Brother Rodney. Sister Deborah, how you doing? Brother Tyrone, how you doing? Mr. Spacely, how you doing? Biblical T, how you doing? Wardy P. Sabrina, how you doing? Brother Rodney, Sister Veronica, all of you all. Peace and shalom. We'll talk